Paula today is going to be talking about her session. Her session is called Lessons Learned, Process Service the Second Time Around. Most of us attending ServeCon are, have been, or aspire to be entrepreneurs and business owners. Those of us who are certainly wish we could have gone back and done some things different. Paula Ashcraft is a 22-year veteran of the process serving industry, and she has the luxury of hindsight, a luxury that not all of us have an opportunity to get. She's doing it all over again with her second process serving startup, Greentree Legal, out of Ohio. Paula will speak on how her career experiences and technology advancements are playing a pivotal role in starting up a process serving company in 2015. In 1996, Paula built a thriving process serving company from the ground up, then was able to later successfully sell that business 10 years later. In addition to having served as a consultant to small process serving firms, Paula lives on a farm outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, which is complete with a music studio. So I'd like to welcome our friend Paula to ServeCon, and I'm going to have Paula start off by talking a little bit more about the path that has led her back to catching the ownership bug. And just so everyone knows, this will be a kind of interview style session that similar to what we did with Randy yesterday if you were on. So Paula, get us going. We're not doing slides, right? We're just, that's right.
No slides,
oh
no.
yeah, so you don't need to share your screen. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's fine. Well, before I get started, I wanted to thank you guys.
You might want to, if possible, unshare your screen. It's just the little monitor button there. That way they see a bigger picture of you and I. Sorry about that. There we go. Perfect.
Okay. Better?
Sorry. Yep.
Okay, no problem. Well, before we get started, I just wanted to thank you guys for doing this conference. I know it's been a lot of work, but I can tell you, for me, I've been dialed in for most of the day yesterday. I even had it on my cell phone when I was driving home, and I had some things to do at night, and I tried to stay dialed in for as long as I can. But every one of your topics, there was something in it that I took away with, and I felt relevant for particularly what I'm going through now as a startup. But even though I've been in the industry for as long as I have, I really think you guys have done an excellent job of providing topics that are relevant, in today's time, and I just really appreciate you guys doing this, and thank you for inviting me. So.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. As I've told a handful of other people, we're simply the platform, and there's so many folks out there that have amazing amount of experience that are willing to share and help their friends, brothers, and sisters in the industry. And I'm glad to hear that it's been beneficial.
So a little bit about my path just getting in the industry is, I, like many people, were a second generation process server. I kind of learned of the industry from my father, who ran a successful business in New York, Atlantic Process Serving, and he basically just said, if you ever need something to fall back on to make a little extra cash, this would be a great thing. It wasn't my intent to, be in the middle of running an organization. It just kind of happened that way. As I got into it, I started picking up some papers, working for other agencies, and I just really wanted to dive in and learn everything about the industry that I could. And when I started my business, Legalese, in '96, I really just started it one client at a time, offering service of process on subpoenas and divorce cases, and that was the bulk of what we did for, I would say, probably the full 10 years that I was in business under Legalese before I sold. What propelled me into a different level business was around 2005, when all the default real estate market stuff hit, and the attorneys that were handling that type of case, historically in Ohio, we're a mail state, so that's an option for an attorney to choose certified mail and regular mail as a method of service. And when all of that volume hit, some of those law firms started looking to outsource that service to the private industry. And to be perfectly honest, the first client that called me that had any kind of volume, when I asked later, why did he choose my company as, the first company to start with? He had never used process servers before. And I was shocked at his response was that I was available, and I actually answered my phone the day he called. So he said that he had went down a list of process servers that advertised, on a website or on a list directory of, their services, and he literally went down that list until he got to somebody that answered the phone, and I just happened to be that person. So we were not positioned to be able to handle that type of volume. He started off small with us, and we just gradually built counties, added on and added to our network. We forwarded a lot of papers, and over the years I just was able to develop relationships with servers and just increase our business by broadening our network of servers that we were using. And so that lasted about a year and a half, and then the national companies that were moving across the state and adding offices approached me. And at that time it was really becoming clear what separated the vendors that were going to succeed in that industry were those that had access to technology, and it was very much becoming technology driven, and between data connections with the clients and just case management and being able to manage the sheer volume that was coming across. So that's what I did. I sold, and then for the next 5 years I worked for that national company. And just all of that time is really a blur. It was very, very busy, and we drastically increased the volume that we were managing in the States.
Right. So get into some of the I guess experiences or lessons from your prior company that are assisting you with this second startup in process serving.
I really have tons of lessons that I'm drawing from. I would say the biggest one that's factoring into what I'm doing right now is, in the past, it was my instinct to get out, market our services, tell everybody that would listen, market, and then build our processes around the clients coming in the door. So, don't hire until the work's there. And that kind of thing. And one of the lessons I've learned is it's really important to build your infrastructure, particularly before you get too busy. And so right now we're developing internal processes, we're testing things, we're repeating the processes to make sure that we have sound, things in place to really, a lot of this is compliance driven, and we've heard several speakers talk about the compliance rules that are, driving our industry right now, which never came into play when I started, years ago. It was, you could accept business on a handshake, and, you would explain your services to an attorney, and if they decided to use you as a vendor, it would just be a phone call, and they would start sending you work, and you did a good job, you would get more work. In today's world, that's just not a reality. You have to have all these things in place before you can even accept in the first case, particularly if you're working with folks that are in the collection or the default real estate world. So we're really, I'm just trying to slow down and not market and build the infrastructure and make sure that from a compliance perspective, we're ready to go. But we keep getting, additional expectations added onto us. And if I could just give you an example as it relates to that, it kind of plays into when the speaker from NARCA was on, Joanne, and she had mentioned, all of the compliance requirements, the third-party vendor stuff. In the past, we were always able to have insurance that was like errors and omissions, and and that was just fine. And now some of the third-party vendor requirements are actually expecting us to carry the same levels of insurance that, in this one case, it's a multi-state law firm. So the same levels that they have to carry, we're now expected as a process serving company to carry that same level of insurance. So when I got my quote, it was, you know, an additional $30,000 of insurance as far as an expense. So it certainly is making it difficult for the smaller companies to compete in that world. So.
Ahead of time, we talked about some of the topics that we wanted to cover, but you said something that kind of brings up a question in my mind. What are there any immediate thoughts that you have, having worked for that national company, that you're applying or choosing not to apply in your new venture from that 5 years with the larger company?
Well, it's just probably in the same lines of. You know, when I worked for that national company and the volume increased so quickly, it became very clear that I just always felt like I was playing catch up with processes and implementing training and things like that. So I'm really paying very close attention to those things now, and I'm trying to do them now before, you know, it gets super busy and it just gets out of hand. Because if you're always in this state of trying to catch up to something, it just, I mean, you know, it's really difficult to, you know, find the time to write job descriptions and implement what your processes are. So,
yeah,
you know, so
it's always disruptive when you're being pulled out of what you expect your day-to-day should be. And yeah, I totally get what you mean. What about yourself? What have you learned about yourself and what it takes to run a successful organization, things that you're good at, maybe things that you don't want to be good at?
Well, it took me a long time to realize this, and this might come as a surprise to you and a lot of people listening, but I'm not an expert at all aspects of running a company. And it really did take me a while to identify where my strengths and my weaknesses were, and not being afraid to say, you know what, I'm not great at that, and then having the ability to hire and balance out where my weaknesses are, and bringing people on my team that can kind of balance out, you know, my strengths. I know where they are. I need somebody to assist in, you know, maybe perhaps operationally in some areas that, you know, it's just not my cup of tea. So I think that would be the single most thing that I could point to as being successful at doing, is once I acknowledged, you know, not great at everything, and just, you know, bringing people that could help.
Right. What about your decision-making process? Has that changed over time?
Tremendously. I can tell you, one of the things I've learned is not all decisions have to come in rapid fire response. You know, I've learned to slow down, you know, not be so reactive. You know, sometimes when things are busy and you're forced to make decisions, it's not always effective to make those in the moment, or as you're reacting to a particular scenario or what have you. So I've just really learned, you know, as far as decision making, is to really think things through and process them, you know, and don't make decisions based out of fear. And I'm still struggling with that. Sometimes, you know, I can give an example of, you know, recently, you know, going through the hiring process of recruiting, and, you know, I had to laugh when Adam was speaking yesterday, because I've been through a lot of the things that he was mentioning as far as your hiring practices and, you know, processes. When I'm recruiting folks, sometimes I get fearful that I'm just never going to find the right candidate, and I just need to pick the best of the bunch, because we've got all this work that we need to get processed, and, you know, I can't spend much more time doing this. So I've just learned that I just need to trust my instincts, don't be fearful, and, you know, it's okay to walk away from business and things like that. I've just really changed in how I used to process stuff. I used to take whatever job came through the door and, you know, not really, you know, just not give it a lot of thought. But now I really think about things and try to analyze whether that's a good model for us to do and things like that.
Right. I just looked over at Adam, and he seemed very happy that you mentioned him. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. It was a great seminar. I really enjoyed his speech, because so many of the things that you guys have went through and trying to recruit good people, I've certainly been through, and I'm still going through. So
great. Talk a little bit about leadership. You've been in the leadership role that you're in now with with your own startup. Then you went to a larger company where I'm sure you led and managed many people, but you also had people that you reported to. What lessons have you learned in those experiences about effective leadership along the way?
I would say that I've learned to not have to control. This kind of goes back to what I was saying about the decision-making process, is just relinquishing control of, I don't have to touch all aspects of the business to feel like it's going to get done effectively. I mean, there was a time when I was so afraid to have anybody else work on affidavits, thinking that there's no way anybody's going to do them the way I do them, or proofread them as good as I do, or customer service. I never thought anybody could handle customer service in the same way I did. And I've just learned over the years that I have to trust the folks that are on your team, and I've really learned how to train and mentor, and just really accept that it's a collaborative effort, and the people on your team are really there to support you. And I've enjoyed that lesson over the years, just really bonding with the team, and and realizing that I don't have to control all aspects of it. So
right. Yeah, I think one of the management lessons that I've learned or I've embraced over the years is hire people smarter than you, and we have plenty of those people here. And you can only manage certain aspects of your business for so long until you have to hand it over if you expect to grow and you expect to improve.
Right. And on that note, I've also learned that you're really trying to train and find your replacement. I mean, success is measured by the longevity of your company, and if everything starts and stops with the person leading it, it's really not that successful. So I'm always looking for the person that's ultimately going to replace me.
Right. Yep.
So I can move to a warmer state.
Well, without that, you don't really have an exit strategy. You're either going to the business is going to go away when you decide to stop working, or yeah.
Right.
Really
I don't want that. So
right. Exactly. So what about technology? What's different from technology? What enhancements have played a role in setting up your new business?
Well, I can tell you, launching a business in 2015 was very differently than launching it in '96. So you can imagine all the changes, right? So it was actually really good for me to be able to evaluate every process that I'm familiar with and think about the technology that exists and how I can incorporate that into my new business. And it was, I'm not a technology gal, so that's kind of uncomfortable for me to do things that are different than how I've always done them. And, just hearing the Twitter presentation and some of the other presentations, I, could really relate to it, because I'm in a position now where I can evaluate all the different softwares that are on the market. I mean, there's some incredible progress that's happened over the years that's enabled our business to be, really technology advanced, even in a way that wasn't even available to me in 2005 when I sold the company. Because had some of these products been available and ready, my decision may or may not have been different, but I just feel like so much has opened up for the smaller process serving company to be able to take advantage and have access to technology with, particularly with the case management systems that are on the market, and having the ability to have data connections with our clients, and and then also transfer jobs from other process serving agencies, so we're not both duplicate entry type stuff. And and then there's things that are just simple. I was given a list of equipment recommendations when I started by somebody that's in IT, and he had, a configuration for a server. And I so far have not found a need to have a server with all these web-based hosting solutions, cloud things that are out there that, that's, a significant cost savings, and just simple things like, a fax line, a dedicated line to do faxing. Do you really need that? I have found that in the rare event that somebody sends us a fax, we can e-fax, and it's a significant cost savings. So everything from online banking to how we make our deposits to you name it. I just try to think, is there a solution out there technology-wise? And I certainly will try to embrace that if there is, and it's been a huge cost savings for us. And I can't stress enough how important social media is. I'm still learning Twitter. I haven't found it as easy as your speaker said it was to use. I need to get better with Twitter. But as far as the other medias, LinkedIn and Facebook, for example, over the years, I've gradually built up some, friends on my friend list that are in the industry. So when I decided to launch Greentree Legal, I just put a little blurb out there, and within minutes and days, really, I had a couple hundred people commenting on, congratulations, we wish you well, I'm glad to hear it, we're going to use your business. And that actually translated into real dollars. There were companies that saw that post and knew I was back in Ohio, and they actually sent me work. So back in the day, that would have taken an awful lot of marketing and mailers and expense, and it was all free. So.
Well, I think Jared, who spoke earlier on Twitter, he hit the nail on the head where you really have to make social media, especially I think a lot of us are ingrained in Facebook just because that's how we connect with our friends and family and post pictures. But Twitter really needs to become a habit for you for that to be an effective channel. And talking a little bit about what you said about the cost savings of web-based solutions and not having to manage your own server. I mean, not only do you have the cost savings there, but the security and the safety and the worry and the maintenance, all that is out the door too with a lot of the solutions that are available to us today.
Right, absolutely. And, it's really come into play, especially now that I'm responding to RFPs and they want to understand, our infrastructure as it relates to IT. There's a whole component that I didn't even have to address because the company that's hosting my data files, they spent an enormous amount of time and energy around, securing the data. So really that part of it fell on them to respond to this RFP. So it worked out beautifully. Yep.
Again, leave it to the folks who are the experts in that area, just like you would when you build a staff and you're hiring.
Right. So I would recommend, if there are any businesses out there that have been, long time established businesses, Jeff Karakin kind of touched on this yesterday, and I agree with them that you really need to reevaluate all your processes that might be, something tried and true that you've been doing for years. And there's, as a business owner, I can respect not wanting to change maybe some things that have always worked for years, but based on the technology changes that are out there, it would be a great time to evaluate and maybe look at ways that you could, advance and offer your clients even, a better solution to what you're doing and potentially save you time, which always translates into saving money. So.
Right. So I guess keeping on the roll with technology, I imagine you're starting to resurrect that network of process servers that you'll be working with throughout the state and even nationwide. Have you seen anything change with the process servers that you're working with when it comes to technology, or have you created any standards or requirements that they would have to employ within their business to work with you?
Here in Ohio, I think change has been a little slow. As far as requirements, we don't necessarily have requirements, although I will say that we like to use people that it's easy to do business with them. So if there are process servers out there that it's not easy to do business with. If they don't have the ability to scan and email back an affidavit, obviously if they don't have a smartphone and they can't use the app in the field that provides real-time status updates back to our system, if they are kind of resisting even printing a job. I mean, I have a couple of servers, so many of our jobs come in via email now, and we're expected to print off a PDF. And we have a cost associated with that, and if the file is large, obviously we'll charge the client for that. In turn, I expect maybe my server to charge a little bit for printing it off, but there are some servers out there that are resistant to that method of serving papers, where it comes in electronically. Now they have to print off a 100-page job and go out with it. They still expect the the forwarding company to send it via FedEx, which is again a delay and things like that. So I would say it's mixed. Half of the servers are embracing technology and realize that that's what's going to feed them and keep them busy. And especially if you're working with a company that is trying to be as technology advanced as they can be, it's very important to work with servers that have that same capability. But with that said, Ohio is, it still has a lot of rural counties. So there are servers that, I could wish they had this stuff all day long, but they're just really slow to embrace some of this stuff, or, they don't have the cell phone connections that we would hope they would have out in the field. So there's still some of that, but for the most part, we've been very lucky in our network and being able to, keep people up to date on technology and things like that. And that's actually one of my goals, is to get around to, the different servers in the state and, just talk to them about just more of an educational thing about how important this stuff really is in this environment of this changing technology.
Right. One thing I forgot to mention in the beginning is if anyone has any questions along the way for Paula, I'll be monitoring the question section of GoToWebinar, so feel free to drop them in as they come up. Paula, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to Randy's session yesterday on forwarding and working with vendors, but I was curious to know if you have any processes or if you have anything in place where you're vetting your vendors and how you're choosing which vendors to do business with.
As far as the process, we do, if it's in-state, it's different, the process is, than out-of-state. So in-state, we tend to work with individuals more so than other process serving companies. I've just found some success with that. The folks that have really a lot of flexibility in their schedule. The recruiting process for us is very important, and it's the key component to this. So we recruit in various different ways, and then once we identify somebody that's passed all of our criteria with the background checks and all of that, and they seem to be enthusiastic in learning this. Obviously I've had a long time in this industry, so we train and we recruit, train, and teach them the ethical standards. It's important that we pass this along to everybody that's coming into our network, so that they are out there acting on our behalf. We're only as good as our network, so we really make sure we're working with strong professional people that are doing this job, diligently and, respectfully and things like that. That's really important. And we don't cut corners on any of that. So if we're recruiting and we're in a hurry, we don't, let go of the training piece of it. It all has to be followed each time the same way, so that way everybody that's working for us, particularly in the state of Ohio, is on the same plan. We all get the same information, and I felt that communication is key, outlining expectations. Independent contractor agreements have helped a great deal in, verbalizing these contracts, and then, going through it with them. They sign it, they have a copy for their records, and, just keeps everything, solid. And as far as for compliance, that also helps as well. And then as far as forwarding agencies, obviously the ease in doing business with somebody is key. And one thing I've noticed with forwarding agencies, if you want to know if somebody's going to pay attention to the detail of your instructions. It starts with the initial contact. So whether it's an email, which in our case it usually is, where we'll reach out and say, we have a job to serve in your area, and then we'll ask a series of questions. What is your routine turnaround? Do you require prepayment? Do you have, we'll just ask all those typical questions. And it's really interesting if they respond back and they only answer 3 of your questions. That's really a true indicator of whether they're going to follow your instructions. So when we're
diligence.
Diligence, paying attention to detail. Are they going to read your instructions if they can't even read the email where you're asking 4 or 5 questions? So right. That initial contact, I think, is key, whether it's on the phone or email. Customer service is huge. So, and it's just finding people that sometimes, you call around and you feel like you're bothering people. Right. It's like you caught somebody having a bad day, but I just
give them business.
Find that odd. I'm like, well, okay, I'll call somebody else.
Right.
So, yeah, it's kind of a combination of all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So, got a question from the audience. This one is from, to give you context, this one's from Steve Glenn. He says, "Hi, Paula, welcome back from the dark side."
The dark side?
Great to see you on.
That means, but
I don't know. We'll have to get Steve to clarify. Maybe it's welcome back to the dark side.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Perhaps. In developing processes to manage service across the state, can you identify the 3 top challenges when managing large serve volumes? Steve is very specific. He wants 3 challenges.
3 challenges. I think it's just the challenges are, the main ones are the same for everybody in this industry. It's just, managing a group of people and hoping that everybody pays attention to detail as strictly as they need to. So the biggest challenge is, getting everybody to follow your instructions and getting those affidavits back in a timely manner. That's always, a huge challenge. So when you identify a weak link in your process, obviously it becomes time consuming to manage through that. But I have found, I believe in your philosophy as well, as, fire quickly. Once you realize there's somebody not, upholding the integrity of the process, you need to do that. So another challenge that we have is just, managing volume and people simultaneously. So if your volume increases, becoming scalable to be able to handle that volume and having, it's just a delicate balance. You might get a client on that you weren't intending to hit that month, and, you're not necessarily prepared for it. So it's just juggling that and working through that and prioritizing.
So do you take that on, you make it work, or are you transparent and you say, this is certainly something we want to take on, but we might have to start a little bit slowly? What would your response to be that call?
I'm always transparent now. I mean, there was a time when I wasn't, and it backfired. And I know folks well enough now that, they know me and they know I'm only going to take the work I can handle. And now I know how to become scalable. So if somebody's wanting to come on board, let's say large volume client wants me to do the whole state of Ohio, I would suggest that we start in four counties. I wouldn't take on all 88 counties. I've learned over time that, yes, it is tempting to want to get that revenue stream coming in very quickly, but it's not doing anybody a service if you're not ready for it. So, and you'll never quite be ready for it if you take it on and then try to hire around it. It's just impossible. So, I just try to slow it down when it comes to that.
Right. So
I don't know if I have 3 things for Steve, but is 2 good enough?
Steve gets 2. That's fine.
Okay.
So you're back in Ohio. I know that in the past you had been involved in the state association there before you were whisked away to Florida. and I know that you had founded the Ohio Association there, and you were part of our state of the state session where we talked about kind of bringing that association back online and getting that up and running again. Feel free to talk a little bit about that if you like, but also talk about how our audience can or should be involved in being connected with the industry and the associations that are available.
Well, for me, I have found that associations are the single most way to reach the experts in our industry. So typically the folks that run and sit on the boards of these associations across the United States, whether it's on the national level or on the state association level, I just think these industry leaders have risen to the top and they're volunteering their time. And I have learned over the years that, as get to know those folks and stay connected and dialed into them. It's really helped me right now as I, start this new venture, over the years, developing those relationships with the folks that are running state associations, particularly, now that, I'm trying to revive Ohio and, Ohio's association, initially, there was lots of enthusiasm around the idea and the concept of having it, but it didn't necessarily translate into volunteers and man hours helping to do all those things. So I think now, some surveys are going out to ask the founding members and all process servers across the state, do they realize the importance, first of all, of having an association? What level are they willing to commit? And, what would they like to see in their association? So that, as far as it relates to Ohio, that's what, we're going to be doing in the next month or two. But getting back to staying dialed in, I just think it's important for people to, network with the leaders in your industry. And in this case, those leaders tend to be found within those state associations. And I've learned just so much information from all those folks, and they're all entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs tend to help other entrepreneurs, is what I found. And you just ask, and you get your questions answered. Attending industry conferences. I have attended hundreds of conferences over the years, and just really stayed connected to people that even those ancillary services like skip tracing and all that other stuff, just, knowing who the players are around in your industry, the people that are speaking on panels. It's helped me develop relationships with clients as well as, my peers across the country. So, I really try to attend, conferences. And then, doing ServeCon, this has been tremendously informative. So I would hope that you guys continue this. And for me, staying dialed into the industry also means really reading a lot. And, I've tried to join as many of the social media groups that are talking about our industry, and seeing how there's just such a vast difference. And, there's a lot of new folks coming in, which is great to see. And there's a lot of old timers. And I think it's important to mentor, and help some of the new folks in the industry, and really that helps you stay connected and understanding what some of their challenges are. So,
got it. I'm going to jump around a little bit. I hope that's okay. What about when you were starting Greentree? Did you jump right in and offer all the services that you offered at your former business, or did you take a pretty close look at what's scalable, what sorts of services, what sorts of clients you want to service? Talk a little bit about how you selected which services you decided to offer.
Right. So when I was working on the national level, there was probably like 6 different service things that were offered. So when it came to me here at Greentree Legal, I really had to think about that. And one of the things I knew I wanted to focus on is the things I was knowledgeable about and things I knew I was good at. So that was key. Obviously, process serving, skip tracing, very easily, to add. Then I had to think about any services that we add before they were to come on board, does my staff know what they're about? Does everybody here understand what it means to do whatever particular service we're looking at? So really, to answer your question, I really want to keep it simple. I want to stick to what I'm good at. I don't need to be all things to all people. I have learned over time that it's not always that high volume, low margin work that's going to, help you be successful. I just want to keep it simple and be very successful at doing what I know we're good at. So as far as adding services, it would have to be something that, and some research goes into before adding to our service line. And then also, and when I say research, a real life example is, I have a client that really wants more of that wants me to build out a network of couriers that actually go into the courthouse and do certain types of things. And that doesn't necessarily mean that my network of process servers that I already have are going to be those same people. So it's a different skill set. There's different, things that they need to know. And process servers aren't always wanting to do that type of work. So before I even started thinking about that or building it out, I did some market research, and I called everyone I knew in Ohio that I used to work with as far as the law firms and asked, if I were to offer this service, is this something that you might be interested in? I'm not asking you to commit or anything, but does this sound like something you would need? And, it was interesting. I found that no one needed that. It was just a particular requirement for that firm. And I found that, really eye-opening, because had I just done something based on that one individual, I would have spent an enormous amount of time building a model around something that there's really not a market for. So, I was glad that I took the time to have those conversations.
Right. So you're saying it's important to know when to say no.
Exactly. Yeah. Find out what it's going to cost you to do the work. And then, once you run that, sometimes it just doesn't really make sense for your business,
Yeah, I think that's one of the traps that we get in as entrepreneurs. We don't want to say no. We don't want to disappoint our clients. We're searching for revenue. We're trying to grow. But ultimately, if you're trying to do something that isn't your core competency, or you're not set up to take on in your process, then it's going to have the opposite effect. It's going to be, probably a negative situation with your client versus just having said no in the first place.
Right, and that's something else I forgot to mention too. If it's not something that flows nicely into your existing process, meaning, if I would have had I taken on that work, my existing case management software that I use probably wouldn't have been able to manage it. So now I'm looking at a separate thing, and training the staff separately, or creating all these workarounds, and then by the end of the day, you're draining your resources off of adding this particular service that probably isn't a moneymaker anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I think the common theme that we're hearing, whether it's you as a manager or whether it's you building a business, is focus on what you're good at and what's scalable.
It's so true. It's very important.
What about forwarding versus serving in-house or serving just in those counties that are in your immediate area? Did you have an idea going in what that right balance would be?
Well, I just know from experience when dealing with volume. I mean, for me, what I hope that we can stick to here, and a lot of this is driven by, obviously the clients that come on board. Some of our clients do tend to have cases with multiple defendants where, not all of them, maybe the two primaries might be in-state and then the rest out-of-state. So, but I hope that we can maintain 80% of the defendants that we're serving be within the tri-state area where, we have very strong connections and close ties to our network. And then maybe 20% be what we forward out of state. Because what I have found is, although, I'm in a great position that I've worked, a number of years in this industry, and I kind of know, we have good out-of-state relationships with our forwarding companies, but there are times when we get, cases where I've never had a serve in that particular area, and I'm just blindly picking a vendor, the same way that a lot of us do. And it's those instances where, you're trusting those folks to do a good job, and they don't always do a good job. So the 20% of my forwarding work would create 80% of our headaches. And, it's just frustrating, that's the way it is. But unfortunately, it is a part of our business that we have to do because, if we're the originating document state, meaning it's Ohio, where process servers have to be court appointed, I can't just tell my client, just go direct to that process server. They have to be court appointed through my agency, where we hold the appointment. So, it's one of those things where it's business that we have to do, and it becomes problematic if we don't have those nice relationships developed with our network. So right. I would say 80-20 rule for me.
Okay, makes sense. And I know we talked about it a little bit earlier on, and we had a session on it yesterday, but it seems like a lot of the people at ServeCon are, curious to know what your insight is and what our speakers' insight is, the folks from larger companies who do a lot of forwarding and have built a network of servers, kind of what their approach is. Do you have any other bullets for us on building a network of servers?
I think what's key and sometimes gets lost in some of the larger companies is maintaining relationship building. Building a network of servers to me is much like building a group of clients that are your customers. I treat the servers fairly. I communicate with them. I think it's so important to let them know how much they're appreciated. Without them, I'm essentially nothing as far as a company. Without my servers, I'm only as good as my network. And I just think servers need to be valued, and they need to be appreciated. They need to be paid a fair wage. They need to work with folks that understand the challenges that they're facing out there, and there has to be an open dialogue. They need to be able to feel like they can call and say, you know what, I know I negotiated this rate with you back when you were doing whatever, but now that doesn't work for me. And I need to be able to listen to that and not always be bottom line number driven, meaning, nope, we're not paying you more than that. That's it. Sorry about your luck. I think so often that, price is such a driving factor in the network, and, and some companies I just think that they don't appreciate their network, and the folks out there in the field doing all this work, and all these expectations are put on them, and even more so now with all the compliance. I think that the network needs to feel valued, and hopefully the folks that work with me do feel that way. And I think that's the single most important thing in building a network. And for example, I was gone for years. I haven't been, operating an Ohio process serving company for years. And, when I decided to do this, my network of servers were the first people I called. And, some of those folks are now working for other companies, but I had a very high success rate of folks saying, absolutely, yeah, we can't wait to work with you again. And I really feel like the single most reason for that is just how I treated them when they worked with me, and just, giving them a voice, and, making it fair and paying them a fair wage to do the job.
Absolutely. It sounds, like that should be just basic and common sense, but a lot of times it's not in business, and I think it's an important point that you made there. So we're getting close to time. We have a few minutes left. This has been great, and the information has been wonderful. Do you have any parting words or anything else that you would like to share with us before we wrap it up?
I'm just really excited to be back in the industry. I'm really excited to be reconnecting with my peers and the folks that have taught me so much over the years. And like I said before, I really hope you guys continue with ServeCon. I think it's been wonderful. I've attended hundreds of conferences, and it was just, I spent, lots of money going and traveling, and, and you might be able to pick up a session or two, but in 2 days, I've really learned a lot. I made a lot of notes. I have a lot of follow-up stuff. I think for me, it's helped the creative process in that, I've got new things to think about. I have Twitter to learn and how to blog and, all that kind of stuff. So I'm definitely motivated, and I'm sure a lot of the folks that are attending this are. And, I just want to continue to be out here offering a good service.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Paula. This has been a great session, and we appreciate your time so much. Have a great weekend, and again, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Take care.